Hello, everyone. We're going to take a minute here and have all of our panelists come online and get started in just a moment. All right. As we round the corner here till 2 o'clock, we will, Central Time, we will still have some other folks joining us. So this is all recorded. We will send out the full recording afterwards. I am here just to greet us, say hello, and help in the back end. My name is Kaylin Rogers. We'll be helping with some of the presentation today. But in a moment, I will hand over the baton to Ken Yeager, who is the CEO and founder of Newpoint Advisors, a turnaround group dedicated to helping small businesses that are underperforming or needing more tools, like the Newpoint Navigator Series cash flow coaching workshop model that he will be talking to you about today. All right, with no further ado, Ken, go ahead and let us know what we're going to do today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kaylin. I'm very excited to be here today. I am. This is, of course, a passion project of mine, but I'm also excited to help others. And with that, try to use today's platform to help a few of you understand, as either as entrepreneurs, what's going on in cash flow, or if you will, if you are someone who's a professional trying to help others, trying to help give you some tools to try to explain this unusual concept to others so that it can help you out. So with that, this is our cash flow coaching workshop. I am Ken Yeager. I'm the CEO and founder of Newpoint Advisors Corporation. Today, we're excited to bring about a conversation about the power of a cash flow coaching and what it can do for you. With me today, so you don't have to listen to me talk the entire time, there are also two fantastic speakers. One, Michael Bagley, Executive Vice President at American Community Bank and Trust, who will be sharing some insights on why cash flow forecasting is important, essential for strong partnership relationships, especially when you will become a steward of other people's capital. And also with him is Peter Jackson, President and owner of Miller Industrial, who will be talking about his experience as a small business owner benefiting from cash flow coaching and, if you will, developing a cash flow culture for himself around the product of cash flow models. With that, all right, we're going to throw in a couple of things, not just a conversation, but we're going to make this interactive. So after the panel, we've talked for a few minutes, we're going to move to two interactive exercises designed to help you better understand your cash flow practice and how to make it meaningful for you. Feel free to ask chat questions while we're doing this. So we'd like to make this interactive. So if we can hear from you, questions will really help enrich the conversation for everybody. So please do not be shy. We're going to use the chat button that is going to be at the bottom of the screen with a little question mark on it. So please go there and throw that on there. As a matter of fact, if you can, to kind of help us get started, just to give us a little bit of sense of demographics and geography, go ahead and do that button and everybody put in what city or state you're actually listening from. That'll kind of give us a little bit of sense for the reach we're having today. So it can also get us used to where that button is. So go ahead and do that now while I try and throw a little bit more out here on the conversation, which is to dive in right away with a little bit more about what we are here at Newpoint, a little bit of commercial break. So we're talking about cash flow. Newpoint Advisors' mission is simple. We exist to help small businesses stabilize and succeed. Our job is to provide financial clarity and actionable strategies for businesses between 5 and 50 million in revenue that are facing challenges with cash flow. Most of those are rather dire, but a lot of people are just cash flow curious and trying to figure out exactly what is going to happen, how they can help make their journey as an entrepreneur better. So we've helped with cash flow coaching, we've helped companies improve decision-making, saving jobs, and create more predictable operations. Cash flow models not only just report systems, they're not only just reporting systems. They're also the heart of our work. This cash flow models, pardon me while I choke down my words. Ooh. Cash flow models, they give clarity, clear view of what's going on with the financial health of the business, not only the inflows, but also kind of how you're using your cash flow and the liquidity that someone like Michael Bagley in a bank is providing you. Unlike traditional financial reporting, cash flow models are forward-looking. They allow businesses to anticipate risk and seize opportunities. As I like to say, the financial package that your accounting can provide you is very important, and you must have it. But just like every entrepreneur, when you're trying to look at a map and how to move forward, cash flow models are that map. They really help you as an entrepreneur see where you're going. This workshop is part of our effort to share these tools and strategies with business owners and trusted advisors. Cash flow models are not just numbers on a page, but they're a framework to align teams, improve communications, and create a shared understanding of what's needed to succeed. So more so than just get numbers on a page, it really helps people come together in a couple of different angles. And I hope to be able to show that to you today through this workshop. By the end of the session, you have a deeper understanding of why cash flow planning is so critical, tools to help you spot and address cash flow gaps in your business, and practical insights that are immediately applicable to your business, hopefully with some good takeaways for today. In a moment, you're going to hear from our two panelists, Michael Bagley, who's going to share his perspective as to trusted advisor relationships with his trusted advisor relationships on the importance of cash flow management, and Peter Jackson, who will speak to the transformative impact cash flow has had on a small business like his. All right. So as we are talking, please share questions. Michael and Peter and I are going to take a few minutes and talk about this area. So Michael, my first question is going to be to you. And my big question is, why is cash flow forecasting critical for businesses, and how does it strengthen the relationship with financial partners?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. We've all heard the term cash is king, and it is as important as this in this discussion as ever. With running your business, it's critical. You can't pay if you don't have cash, you can't pay your vendors, you can't pay your bank, you can't pay yourself, you can't pay your people. And so if you run out of cash tomorrow, you're going to run out of cash tomorrow. You can't discover today that you're going to run out of cash. You need to know that you're going to run short on cash a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 10 weeks prior. It's really critical that you understand what your cash position is and what it's going to be in the future, which is forecasting, and really, really important. So, cash flow forecasting is it's important not only to companies that are large, companies that are small, healthy companies and struggling companies. I have customers that have make a lot of money, have good balance sheets, and do cash flow forecasting as a normal course of business. Back in the day, when I was at American National Bank and Chartered Bank, whenever we had a troubled company, we'd say, well, where's your cash flow forecast? Well, that would be our second question. Our first question is, can we invite someone like Ken and Newpoint in to help you forecast your cash? Because as a banker and as a lender, it's important that we know that you're able to make your bank payments, you're able to make your payroll, and able to pay your rent and such. So it's really critical that not only you know where your cash is, but that we know where your cash is.
And Michael, what is that like for you as a lender to have someone be able to answer in the affirmative or to shrug their shoulders when they have a cash flow model? Where does your head go?
It's so we bankers have a saying, we love good news, we can deal with bad news, but what we can't deal with is no news. And so if someone comes to us, say, on a Thursday and says, hey, I can't make payroll on Friday, can you please approve our overdraft? That puts the bank in a tough position. You don't want your banker, making a decision whether you're going to pay your people on Friday what we've discovered is if companies don't make payroll on Friday, not many of their employees show up on Monday. And you don't want to put that on your banker. If you come to me and say, hey, in 3 weeks, we're going to be running low on cash. Can you help us out? We can sit down and put together a financing program or a line of credit or some sort of creative way to help you manage through that. But if we don't know that in advance, it's really hard for us to help.
That is super helpful. I like that picture you're painting there. Well, let's add Peter to the conversation as well. Peter, in your journey, what were your biggest cash flow challenges as a business leader, and how did implementing cash flow model help in that process?
Yeah, sure. So, very quickly, I purchased this company in April of 2018, and very quickly trying to grow the business. I pulled some levers I shouldn't have, probably a little too aggressive, changing things too soon. And one of the levers I pulled was one of our inventory levers, which changed some of our service levels with customers. And immediately, probably within 6 months of that move, I found myself in sort of this crazy world of, more flows out of my bank account than I was used to in any prior experience that I had, and quickly realized, it's not just whether, sales or profits or doing things, it's like cash in the bank account. And I was reminded early on in my journey of just acquiring a business that, cash flow matters, but I was like, yeah, whatever. And it actually ended up being very important. And so putting out cash flow helped me see sort of the timing of payments from vendors, how frequently customers paid me, and unproductive parts of the payroll, all through that process of trying to sort of restabilize the business after that sort of inventory shift. And this was all pre-COVID. This was all 2019, and so we were able to stabilize things pre-COVID by Q1 of 2020, and then of course the world just ended in March, April of 2020, and it turns out that discipline of looking at cash flow every day through modeling was super helpful in COVID too, of just staying focused on, okay, just, that is the thing. If you don't run out of cash, you'll survive, tough storms. Probably the other thing that on the go forward that, looking at cash every day is helping with is just also, understanding more of how commercial banks think. And I want to be able to borrow more money in the future to acquire more businesses through SBA and conventional debt. And so just, really sound, cash flow management, like has already been discussed, is the value add there as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Peter, to an extension to that conversation, so you all of a sudden became a cash flow convert and you were doing it. How hard was the journey? So we talk about what you did, but tell us a little about, learning it, getting trained on it, then using it. Was it an easier or harder process?
It's Ken, it's still a journey. I mean, it's and this is also it's like working out, right? I mean, if you're a couch potato before and somebody comes to you like, all right, bro, we're going to do 2 a day. So you're going to be like, I'm pretty sure I'll keep eating the potato chips, right? So, I mean, it's definitely been this sort of slowish burn, but it's been accelerating post-COVID. But just looking at the flows of cash was new for me, right? Just dive, and then it forces you to ask questions and start to dive in and say, okay, stuff like on average, most of our customers are paying us within this time and that works, but there's this other customer that's just like not doing that. And it's like, okay, how do I apply more pressure or more incentives or whatever, and just figure that out? Or should I even have them as a customer? We lost some customers actually due to that, just sort of trying to turn it. Wasn't a big deal because I was like, all right, well, that money I'm purchasing gets allocated somewhere else. We can service other customers who are paying on time better. So some of the sales from there should go up. So that's part one of just getting used to that and starting to make these changes. The other thing that I'm still in the process of is changing our company culture. So I changed some of my thoughts personally around it, but it's not enough. It's like it's even harder to change the company culture around it, and getting folks who maybe aren't as familiar with some of the financial elements of a business, or haven't gone to school for any of that, and just getting them to think about cash flow, because of course everybody says, well, our sales are up, so isn't life great? That's like, well, your sales are up and cash can be down. And in my world, I go, that's not a win.
Right.
And it doesn't help that, I've also noticed most of the folks in our ecosystem, most of our suppliers, salespeople are paid on sales, not even really like, profits in some cases in their companies. So it's like all they care about is sales going up. They don't care whether it's a bad bet and you have less cash after you bought more product from them. Like, these things are not relevant. And so, and so much of the whining and dining that they do is like, oh, are your sales up with us? All right, great. We're going to buy the team lunch. And of course, all my team gets excited. They're like, oh, we got free lunch. And it's like, all right, well, my cash is down. I'm not eating any of this lunch. Give me my rebate on this Subway sandwich, please. Right. So it's like, all of that is still an ongoing journey, but yeah, it's definitely been kind of similar to the discipline of all the life wellness things, eating well, sleeping well, exercise, all that stuff. That's like, all right, isn't there just a simple pill? And the answer is no.
Yeah. That's a very good picture. That's a very realistic view of how cash flow evolves as from an entrepreneur's mindset. Let me ask thank you, Peter. I'm going to turn over to you, Michael, and ask this question. Putting yourselves at the other side of the table from Peter, what has been what have you seen in the evolution of companies that you worked with who didn't have a cash flow model, but then adopted one over time, or adopted one right away out of crisis? What's that been journey like, and what are the places where you've had the most impact in trying to help them along with that journey?
Yeah, it helps us better understand how to put together a financing package, whether it's a line of credit or other financing. What Peter described. If you've got a customer that basically say it's a Fortune 1000 company that goes and says, okay, I've been paying you in 30 days, now I'm going to pay you in 90. We can help with that, right? If we know that a Stanley or a Mikasa or Milwaukee, a big company, has the wherewithal, but they just choose as a big company to slow pay you. We can put a financing, exception or a line of credit in place to help finance that. But if we don't know that, we can't help with that type of a situation. And that's all kind of baked into the forecasting model. Those folks that have inventory, there's slow moving stuff, there's fast moving stuff. Obviously, bankers like to lend on companies that pay quick and that and inventory that moves quick. So having that knowledge helps us put together a line of credit that works for both the bank and the company. As far as so I guess I'll leave with that.
No, that's interesting, because you're getting into an interesting spot. You kind of laid out two KPIs: fast paying customers, fast moving inventory. So you're kind of taking cash flow to a language, kind of taking an operating language and saying, well, your cash flow does these things, or your cash flow is a result of these activities. Do you have and does that come around to an aha moment with customers who are like, oh, so if I do better, I get better cash flow, I get more credit? You see that conversation happening with people?
Yeah, in many instances, for sure. And a lot of people, banks typically lend on receivables under 90 days from invoice. We typically exclude slow moving and obsolete inventory from borrowing bases. But if we know a company, a nice size company that our borrower has good margin on, is not going to pay for 120 days, we can make exceptions to that rule. Same with inventory. If we know that a piece of inventory is critical to the component of the company, but it's just going to be there a while, we might have some flexibility in lending against that. So understanding, kind of getting into the weeds and the detail of that stuff is pretty important, because that does lead to our ability to help bridge that working capital gap, that financing gap that you have between collecting, the cash flow cycle of, buying inventory, selling inventory, collecting, and then paying the bank or paying your obligations.
Fantastic. Peter, taking what Michael's talked about in terms of receiving cash flow information and what I'd say data about a business, how has the cash flow forecasting helped you tell your story as you're moving through, and has it helped you tell your story better as you've gone through your entrepreneurial growth? And has it changed, and how has it changed your conversations?
So, it's changed some of the conversations to both my team and suppliers, right? So, and this is work that, again, it's been an evolution, but we started on this year that will continue into next year. We carry a lot of inventory here. We have 20 to 30,000 SKUs in inventory, and the ability to say, all right, it's sort of a mindset shift where we said every dollar we spend on purchasing is a bet on not only will this sell, but will the customer pay us on what's sold, and just really going through to the end game of, it's not just about, how much, how high our gross margins are, but also it's like, who are we selling this to and when will they pay us? So therefore, when we make this bet that we're going to buy, $10 of X SKU, we're also making a bet on this customer paying us for it, and really changing the landscape of how we're thinking about our entire, sort of purchasing model. And then I've been showing, I started this about 2 months ago for the first time, and, I wish I would have done this sooner, but it's like, you get these sort of insights as you keep, working with the numbers. 2 months ago, started showing two of our key suppliers purchases by SKU and sales by SKU as just a proxy for cash flow. So we're saying, sales by SKU is the cash coming in, purchases by SKU is the cash going out. And I've been able to show them in, sort of, 4 to 6 months of buying something where we're upside down on a SKU, where we literally had, more cash go out for that SKU than cash come in for it. And I'm going, all right, well, they're going, we'll still win. You bought it from us, right? And right. Getting them to now change how they're looking at how to service us better. And from the little feedback I've gotten, I'm not surprised. They said, hey, you're one of the few customers we have that's even looking at it this way. And I also just learned something from Michael right now that also ties into this, which is I didn't realize that by thinking about inventory this way, I'm also increasing the capacity to borrow money, right? Because what this will do over time, and definitely in the next year, is we're going to get rid of our slow moving inventory faster, right? And so the inventory we have on hand will be inventory that, banks will want to loan against. And so that's just another insight that just sort of ties us all together, where, looking at this as bets on cash flow sort of all tie into picking better customers, serving them better, and moving inventory faster.
I love that. Love the instant epiphany, if you will, and also the where you're going with that financial ratio, how I see it tying back to what you do on a day-to-day basis, as you're explaining to a third party and explaining to your team. And that is I think the evolutionary thing that we always look for. Cash, as I'll tell people, cash is easy. Cash flow is hard to understand because it's so many. Once you get the ball moving on a business, it's so many moving parts. and for you to talk about what is essentially, yes, a business motion, action, move inventory, which becomes a function or a contributor to what we call liquidity, which is when you get into it as a balance sheet conversation, not an income statement conversation. And it's a very fearful place. A lot of people don't want to go spend a lot of time on their balance sheet trying to figure out what's going on. It's a difficult and dark and scary place. P&Ls are hard enough as it is. So when you're getting into that and you're suddenly having that conversation with that level of comfort and that level of forward thinking, you're bypassing a lot of competitors and a lot of people, market participants, and becoming very much an elite borrower, an elite operator, an elite leader. And all of this is from simply just following one metric. And this is where we try to get people to understand the cash flow culture. And another concept I want to throw up there that you guys have really brought in, and we're going to chew on this as we continue our interactive piece here, is Peter, Michael, you both brought it up, is when we talk to clients about cash flow models, which is all this sort of financial story, we say, okay, well, now how are you going to communicate that to other parties? And of course, there's the thing about putting a cash flow model out there. It says, well, I've just shown everyone all my, like payroll numbers. I've shown, information I don't, really want to show people. We tell people when you have a cash flow model, if it's a piece of paper, on one side of that piece of paper is my cash flow model with the workflows going through it. But when you build a cash flow model, the only way to do that properly is not to say, well, I'm going to sell $50,000 worth of inventory next week, is to say, I'm going to sell X number of SKUs, 1,000 SKUs next week, and they're going to have different strata. I've got seasonal SKUs, I've got periodic SKUs, and that's the number that your team understands and they can operate to, and also something that translates to when you're talking to a banker. I see you trying to communicate how you're functioning and how that's affecting cash. That's not showing your cash flow model. That's looking at the other side of the piece of paper, looking at KPIs. So the two sides, my KPIs are tying to my cash flow is tying to my KPI. When those two are connected, your internal culture starts to think cash flow, and everyone starts to see off the same page, and people externally are suddenly able to understand your business in a way they couldn't when it was just a bunch of financial ratios. So it really ties everyone together. And that's the thing we teach. That piece right there makes it all worth it. And that's that cash flow culture coming into play. All right. Well, guys, thanks for indulging us on that part of our conversation. We've done a lot of talking, but it's the middle of the afternoon, so I want to get people kind of get their brains pumped up here and get them more awake again. And with that, I want to move to a little more kind of a quiz, if you will. So we're going to have two quizzes. The first one is going to be really simple. Everyone's going to take out a piece of paper, if you will, or mentally stare at the screen here. We're not going to do any interactive pieces. We're just sort of a kind of a warm-up exercise. And we're going to answer 3 questions. So take just a couple seconds, Scott, down, and we're going to move on from there and talk to Peter and Michael about some of these, the impacts some of these things have, which you guys have been sort of picking at for a couple of minutes. Okay, first, how far out can you consistently project revenue and sales? Can you go out 13 weeks or a quarter or 3 months, which is essentially what that is? Is it several weeks? You're good to like a month or 2? You're unsure. It's like, my business is really different from everyone else's business. I really don't know if I can forecast. And then we don't or we can't, right? So a lot of people, some people here are like just first time ever. By the way, you would be in the majority if you hit the last letter there on the score, which by the way should be the letter D and not C, but we won't worry about that. All right. What is your payroll cycle? Are you weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? And we're like, why does that matter? Because when does payroll happen? When do I have to get the money in the door? How much money do I have to get in the door? And how fast do I have to get in the door? That's the sort of stuff we're looking for here. Monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, and depends on sort of a paid when paid sort of contractor arrangement that happens every once in a while. And then also number 3, what are your typical vendor payment terms? All right. So you're giving it away more than 30 days, or maybe you're close to the vest and it's due upon receipt or net 15, up to 30 days, as you say, immediate payment terms, or prepay. There are a few people out there who can conduct the miracle of cash flow where you don't need outside sources. You're able to generate your own cash flow. So take those into consideration for a couple of seconds while we keep advancing the conversation. What I want to get to next after getting through those questions here is once you noted your answers, we'll walk through a real life example of a business facing similar challenges and discuss how cash flow coaching has transformed their operation. We've had a conversation here with Peter, who's revealed a lot, but in looking at the scale of the things that one could do, Peter, we're going to look at kind of the conversations you've had with yourself and with your team over the last couple of years, talk about how you might have transitioned from one score to another based on the fact that you were using your cash flow. So let's paint that picture. Look at some of those details that you've been through, and where did your business, and we'll talk about where your business scored before you started, and where do you think it sits now. So Peter will kind of let you kind of chew on it for a minute here. And so, Peter, were you able to forecast out 13 weeks when you started the process, or did that become a mystery?
Not at all. And it's still a work in progress for me. I would say I moved from we don't or we can't, the last one, to now being at several weeks. And in part, COVID's changed a lot of our business. I mean, it basically went from way more predictable to way more variability in terms of that part of the business. So it's not solely my skill set, but definitely much higher on the score of being able to look forward, and a lot of it also is understanding just diving deeper. It's a lot of us ask deeper questions about not where revenue is going to be, but from whom, right? So we've had customers where in a given month where our revenue might be flat, but we've noticed it's come from different customers. So some customers are down due to various reasons, some customers are up due to some of the programs we've implemented inside the account. And so on that basis, I'd say we have a lot more clarity than we did a few years ago, definitely than I did in 2018. I didn't know anything.
That's a very common answer. Most people a lot of our clients start with a white piece of paper. Some people say, well, I have a budget, but it's 12 months long and I don't know, it's not worth the paper it's written on. So it's a journey for sure. When you've got in your journey, have you had the occasion to rethink your payroll or how you're paying employees and how that timing works? So
two things that have sort of come from thinking about payroll. One is we've cut staff post-COVID, in part understanding that, okay, they're not contributing. It's like sales go up a little bit and payroll costs are still higher than the increase in sales, or sales are flat and our payroll costs are too high relative to the sales, depending on the year we're talking about. So I've just been more judicious in what our payroll exposure is. And so our sales are roughly flat to last year, but our payroll is down by like $60,000-$70,000, and that's material. And so a lot of that came also from not just eliminating roles, but also saying, okay, how do we redo certain operational processes so that the work's not just dumped on somebody else and they feel overwhelmed. It's like, oh, we actually redesigned the work so that it is palatable, so that we can have that decrease in payroll exposure. And I also realize, like, when you're looking at all the cash, it's not just salary that is payroll exposure. Okay, you got payroll taxes, you've got like the benefits, workman's comp's paid on salary, raise somebody's salary, their workman comp's insurance goes up, right? So it's all these other, like, everybody taking their, government takes their percentage of payroll, right? So it's like everybody's taking their percentage of payroll. I wish I could take a percentage of payroll and just put it in my pocket every year too, right? So it's like everybody takes their percentage of payroll as a part of the whole, like, that's all cash going out. And so, it's forced me to think it's not just like, oh, you pay somebody $50,000, $60,000 a year, and that's the net end of the day cash out. That's like there's more cash going out than that you agreed to in your employment agreement. And of course, employees are asking for raises. They don't see it that way. The other way I've thought about raises too is just baking more incentives into. It's like, hey guys, we got to grow. Sales, grow gross margin. That's where you get paid, right? So it's been a hard conversation, particularly through COVID with the Great Resignation. It's just been a hard message to sort of, try and recruit the right people who are down to do that. And that's been an enormous challenge, but I still stay very steadfast on trying to build a culture that way around performance-based incentives more than, hey, you've been here 100 years doing nothing, so therefore you have tenure and you should earn more as a base salary. That was the old culture, and it's now dead. But it's still a lot of work to get folks to understand what things do I need to do to make more money here that are tied to these performance metrics.
Yeah.
And I learned, this year that we have to train people better for them to see how to actually do the work day in, week in, month in, month out to get to those results.
I love that. Very, very gritty examples of how cash flow model is, or cash flow focus has helped you redesign the business, that necessity. I would continue with the kind of way getting interactive with you guys. And so, Michael, I'm going to bring you into this. And if there are journeys that you are particularly fond of or recall from some of your clients where cash flow has impacted, let's start with number 3, since we kind of left off there, the terms that clients are using with their customers. Does anything ring a bell for you that you can share with our audience?
So just because your terms are 30 days doesn't mean your customer is going to pay you in 30 days. We've seen, your terms are net 30, but that customer is paying you in 55 days on average. And so net 30 doesn't mean net 30. That's one really important thing. Getting to number 1, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, Ken, here, but we typically start with a 13-week cash flow, right? That's the term in the industry, right? And that works for some companies. It doesn't work for others. You look at companies. We've got large companies that manufacture large components, and they've got 8-week, 12-week, 16-week, 20-week backlogs. Yeah. They can pretty much predict their revenue. We've got other companies that plow snow. Is it going to snow tomorrow? Well, their revenue is less predictable, right? Depends on what Mother Nature does that day or that week. So, and just keep in mind that a forecast is just that. It's a forecast. It's forward looking. When we ask for projections, whether it's income statement projections or balance sheet projections or cash flow projections, forecasts, it's a best guess. The one thing we know is that it's not going to be 100% right. It's just a forecast. But what it does is it gives us the best information that we can have, short of a crystal ball, to help with some of these things. So, the vendor terms, and it's by industry. I mean, if you're in the food and the meat business, those terms are 7 days, and they are hard and fast 7 days. If you're in another industry, it might be 75 days because that's just the way it is in that specific industry. So, you got, as a business owner, you've got obviously need to understand that, and talking to your banker who lives and dies by rules and in the box, out of the box, you have to be able to have that conversation too. As far as the payroll cycle, we've got a lot of companies that are union that get paid weekly, and you can't vary from that. It's rare that we find companies that are being paid monthly anymore. Mostly biweekly or semi-monthly are the most typical. And that can't vary, right? If you've got a payroll on the 15th, you can't, call your people and say, well, it may be the 18th this month. That doesn't work. And so, while number 3 is going to vary, it's never going to be 30 days. It's never going to be 35 days. It's always going to be somewhere, in that range. And so that's why it's important to do the best you can to forecast so that you can go to your financial partners and try to predict what that gap, what that need, that financing working capital gap need might be so that you can run your business.
Michael, that is excellent information as well. I'll land on this, and as we move forward, I love what you said about forecasts. What we like to tell people is, they're always going to be wrong. So for the perfectionist out there in the entrepreneurial land, you're gonna have to learn how to shed that feeling of insecurity. But also, it's a great what if tool. Where they say, what if this changes? What if that changes? And you can use a cash flow model much more flexibly than a budget or other tools to really give yourself a feel for what's the impact in your business of gaining a customer, losing a customer, and all sorts of other different things you can think scenarios in your head. So it's extremely valuable in that regard. Well, with the time we have, we want to move forward, and we're going to get into our big quiz. So then we're going to get a little more interactive here. Thank you, Kaylin, for bringing this up on the screen. What we're going to do here is diving a little deeper into cash flow practices, and think of it as either some of you as a business leader or you were coaching someone. We have this little quiz. This will help identify whether your cash flow or the cash flow you're thinking about and its operations are in a state of chaos or crisis, and which mode you kind of think. And think of a chaos as being a little bit more what generally happens in the day-to-day entrepreneurial world. And crisis is a little bit heavier handed. Things aren't quite going the way you would expect them. And not only that, it's not just that every day can be that way, but it starts to pile up. It's like if you've gone to Vegas, you're starting to lose more bets than you're winning. It's starting to feel a little less fun than it was. The chaos sometimes can be an energy driver, and chaos can be a little bit energy absorber, and take away from the fun. All right, so to participate in this, you've got the QR code here up on the website. We also have a URL on the page. And you're going to take a couple of minutes to take this quiz. You can start now. You don't have to wait for me at all. It's a fairly self-explanatory quiz. It should take you less than 3 minutes. And while you're in that quiz mode, I'm going to go back to Peter and Michael, and we're going to ask a couple more cash flow questions. And then when we get to the end of the stated 3 minutes, we'll stop there, talk about the scoring, which we will not have access to here on this site. But we'll talk about the rank and kind of where you might find out and what that means about the opportunity for cash flow models for you. All right. So please continue to take the quiz. I'm going to mark our time right now, and we'll take about 3 more minutes. Let's see, I want to make sure I also get the quiz comments in here. When you finish the quiz, you will see a highlight. We won't see it. So you'll see your score. Please go all the way to make sure you go all the way through the quiz and get to the end so you can get the score. We'll share personalized summaries with everyone via email after the workshop, so you'll have specific takeaways to act on. As you take the quiz, do it for yourself, for your own business, or if you're a business leader, if you're an accountant, a banker, a trusted advisor, some other consulting role, pick one of your current or previous clients, maybe particularly one that struggled, and kind of try to read through what you think their answers would be to see how this can help you better understand their financial picture or some of the roadblocks that aren't necessarily financial picture roadblocks, but operational or mental roadblocks can help you potentially become a better trusted advisor. You can take the quiz as many times as you want. So if those of you guys with lots of clients, please feel free to just keep coming back to this and throwing out more scenarios. As you take the quiz, you should start to get results in real time. Again, they'll be real time as once you hit finish at the bottom. There are 12 questions in the quiz if you haven't figured that already. And they're going to come out with a couple of items that we'll come back to in about a minute or two. But Peter, we were talking about the KPIs and the conversations that you are having. Have you found yourself using any particular sentence or statement with your team when you're trying to explain cash flow, like a bit like your comparison of purchasing versus selling? Any other particular elements that you've been able to extract from a cash flow model that you've used with your team?
So I every couple of weeks I send out an email called Reflections. I don't know if anybody really reads it, but people say they do when I ask. And of course, that's always the right answer. Of course, who would say that, right? So I try and communicate some of the decision making of, and I've tried to reinforce the message that every decision we make is effectively a bet of money and or time. And so how do we just get more payoffs for the bets we're making? So the mindset change and looking at cash all the time, it forces you to go, okay, well, if all this cash is always going to be going out and I'd like more to come back in, well, then like your brain is forced to say, all right, well, everything's a bet then, right? So it's really thinking about, how do I control the size of these bets? And one of the insights that I've had that I've tried to sort of work into our business is, since the world's changing so fast post-COVID, we have customers getting bought, retiring, dying. The whole nature of our industry is changing much faster than it has pre-COVID. And so it's forcing us to sort of move faster and learn things we don't already know. So we're sort of in this non-linear, less predictable world than we were when I first bought this business. And so, this whole idea of trying to get my team to understand that, how do we benefit in a world where there's so much uncertainty? And it's the ability to play with, experiment, and tinker more than some of our competitors, particularly the larger ones, that allows us to, create better interactions with our customers. And so to do that, I'm trying to change our mindset to think about, it's a bet of money and time, not your money, the company's money, but it is your time. And so it's like, how do you allocate your time appropriately to which customers for which ideas that hopefully it'll pay off in some way? And so in a way, I'm taking some of my own learnings from the cash flow modeling into ways they can operationalize it every day, right? So, from my perspective, it's not that they necessarily understand the things I do about, the flows of money, but really more them understanding, at the end of the day, all these tools are about making decisions. And, how do you understand whether you made a good decision or a not so good decision? And then how does that play out over time? Because certain decisions, as I've realized, you may not know until 6 months from now you made a really terrible decision, right? So it's not like everything shows up immediately as good or bad, or you may have planted a seed today that, again, in 6 months goes up as like a win. And so it's the ability to sort of make decisions from that perspective of everything's an investment of time and or money, and we know how to measure the payoff.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, super helpful. I want to take that and do a little bit of conversation about the quiz, and then Michael, we're going to talk about the 3 grades that we've got here, and what we'll do is we'll talk about what would that mean, how would that conversation look with you as a capital steward, and feel free to step in as the conversation comes around. So if you took the quiz, if you were able to get through that, which congratulations on your technical skills. If not, there are ways to take this later, and we certainly will make sure you have that. But there were 3 different score rankings that we put in place. So the number one of which is, if you are really kind of got your stuff together, you're scoring a 9 through 12, which is, say there's more chaos than crisis in your world, and you've thought about your cash flow model a bit. You're probably sitting in a category we like to call the private equity and venture capital types. You have been trained, you have been pushed into this area. You are thinking like a cash flow culture person. You're a champion of cash flow, and that's fantastic. This tool will help you, if you will, distinguish yourself from your peers, help you grow your business, help you communicate more clearly the actions that your employees are taking when you're not in the room and you can't push them around and tell them what to do. They have it in their brain what they should be doing. It's like an instruction manual attached to their head. My payroll, my bonus, my future, it tends to gravitate towards how well I make sure this inventory is in the business, or that I make sure that things come in the door that are supposed to, whatever role I might have that isn't the big picture role, but definitely fits into what we do as a business. That sort of infection, developing a culture, super powerful. If you're not seeing that strata within your business, it's a place you can go with cash flow models. And again, to mention the venture capitalists and private equity, it's where the people who tend to make the most profits, tend to be the most successful with their businesses, do take their clients, and they use this model to do that. This is the tool that gets them there. The next group, scoring 5 to 8, you're sitting in a place where you're not necessarily master of cash flow, but you're not a disaster. You've got a little bit of chaos in your business. You may not have any crisis whatsoever, but you certainly don't have the mastery of the tools. There's things about cash flow that are a mystery to you, or you've not given them the time of day. You've already got, you're already probably working 50, 60, 70 hours a week in your business. Where the heck am I going to find the time to come up with this, deal with this exercise? Where this has put you is by being blind, if you will, by this controlling mechanism that is going to drive your business. We like to refer to as the knife's edge. So you're not in trouble, but you're also not in success. You teeter on the edge, and what we worry about is the next COVID, the next black swan event, the next thing you can't see coming around the corner, tipping you off of that razor's edge into the unfortunate bucket of going to crisis. So it's gaining the knowledge around cash flow, which allows you to be more flexible and pivot when things start coming at you, as I like to say, turning mountains into molehills. You start to gain control. And this is where you would want to be able to take action to avoid the things you can't see today, but keep happening to you from time to time and causing you not to be the successful entrepreneur that you want to be. And then last but not least is our scores 0 through 4. Here you are. You're in debt. You're dead on crisis mode. You're at your fluency in, if you will, cash and financial matters is extraordinarily limited, and such to a point where you don't know where you're going to crash. You're not teetering. You are actually sliding down the hill into a crisis mode. If you feel that this happens to you, you may have actually gone there and dodged the bullet once or twice. But a bit like going to Vegas, eventually the house is going to win. You're probably going to want to find your way to a cash flow model, because this is where you're going to take control over those things that are controlling you. You're going to be able to push back on the fact that payroll keeps coming at you so fast. Push back on the fact that you've got customers that don't pay or may not be worthy of your time and energy, and push back on activities that are not producing cash, but somehow are, like Peter described, the ghost of the past, the things that we used to do, the things that we've just always done because that we exist, but really don't do what they're supposed to do for your business. In all instances, if you are struggling with how to get on the on-ramp of the cash flow model highway, please reach out to us at Newpoint. We have those materials and the teams and the coaches to build. You can go out and Google 13-week cash flow models, and I would encourage you to do so as the beginning of your journey. But if you're trying to figure out how to get on the on-ramp and how it works, come to someone like Newpoint and come to our coaches who can show you and give you that initial push into the market. All right, with that, I said quite a mouthful. I want to close out with our guests. And so, Michael, I'm going to start with you. Is there anything that resonates about kind of the scoring and the opportunity around cash flow that you want to impart to our audience?
Just, Ken and I have known each other for 15, 20 years, something like that. And there's nobody better in the industry that can help a small to mid-sized business in this area. Ken is super. He's one of the best in the industry. To pull a movie analogy here, timely. Bankers, we're all not Mr. Potter. We're actually here to help folks. If we don't lend money, we don't have revenue. So if I don't make loans, I don't have a job. And if I don't make good loans and I don't make loans to get repaid, I don't have a job. So it's really important that we have communication with our borrowers. And at the forefront of that communication is cash flow forecasting. It's really important that we know, where cash is coming in, when it's going out. Obviously, inflows have to exceed outflows over a long period of time, or that's not good for the business. And so it's really critical as you communicate with your banker and look at your financing options to really utilize the tools that Ken is outlining here. It's really critical. And if you haven't kind of gone down that the forecasting, cash forecasting road, I encourage you to do so. And if you do have a relationship with a bank or a banker, keep that line of communication open because that's really important.
Michael, thank you for the kind and sage words that you've provided us. I want to take this one more step out and really come to you, Peter, for really final thoughts. You've had a lot to say today about your journey in cash flow models. If you were talking to your younger self or some other entrepreneurs that you might meet in networking, what advice do you have around managing the business, and does cash flow rank in that conversation?
Yeah, 100%. Ken, one of the ways I think about this is that I do want to buy another business in that sort of the next 18 to 24 months, SBA backed loan. And I think about, all right, what's the first kind of 6 months, right? I remember my first 6 months here and I was like, oh, we're changing the logo. I go, nope. Like cash flow, number one thing. It's like day one, it's like, okay, and even before that, in some of the diligencing, it's going to be that. So it's not like, I won't know anything. And then day one, I'm starting to look at cash. It'll be like, as part of the diligencing process, what are all these flows in and out? Really, really, really understand that. And then from there, starting to think about, all right, what decisions are most likely in that first 6 months prioritized to either if I'm buying a little bit of a turnaround situation, stabilizing cash flow more, or if I'm buying into a more stable situation, just what bets do I think will show up in the cash sooner rather than later? And it's like, that's where I start. That's where, I began. It's taken me years actually to get to the point I'm at now, when in my next acquisition, it should take months, right? Like literally like 3 months in the game, in the seat. These are the, top 3 to 5 things we're going to do in year one that are all cash flow focused. Like that's why we're focused there. It's not like, these are the top 3 to 5 things we're going to do because it feels good. Because I like the colors. Yeah, no, like that. We're going to save that for years 3, 4, 5. Right. So it's a really, and I've also realized it's just a much more rigorous. This is why banks, sort of, everything else is kind of BS. No offense, Michael, unless it's cash, right? Like it's like you could tell me about your social media likes, bro. Okay, show me the money, Jerry. And it's like, no loans. Yeah, obviously, it's like. So unless you can turn those likes into cash, then it's like I don't care how popular you are on social, right? So it's a lot of that rigor around. The decision making should show up in the cash flow, and if it doesn't, go back to your decisions. And it's taken me a good number of years and just a lot of like stress to get there, but I feel emotionally I'm there and attached to that. Like, make great decisions, it should show up in cash. Feedback on the loop over and over and over again, and you will be successful. And that's the rigor it takes, I think, to be successful at any stage in business. I mean, even if you're a Fortune 100 company, you can go bankrupt. Like, you just run out of cash. Like, it doesn't matter, GM, in the financial crisis, like, oh, we've got all these, cars on the road. It doesn't matter. You ran out of cash, or you're running out of cash. Like, you need a bailout. Like, it doesn't matter how cool your cars are. All right. So it's like that insight of whether you're a small business like me or, Fortune 100 like General Motors, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's still the same cash game. You can always have more obligations of cash out than cash coming in. And at any level, you're in trouble, flat out. Right. So the whole journey and life cycle of a business is cash, 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 cash. That's how I see it.
Fantastic. Guys, both of you, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to everyone today. Thank you to our audience for sticking with us for all this time and listening in. I appreciate you guys taking the quiz. We've got a QR code here for scheduling, also our email and our website where you can find us to talk to us. Remember, we've obviously beat this up pretty good today. Cash flow can be a tool for success and for redemption. I can't thank you guys, Michael, and for Peter, for putting such a fine point and such a journey detail to all this. With that, we will adjourn here. Thank you, everyone, so much for your time. Take care. Bye-bye.